school and on to college and career. Our state leaders responded, setting in motion important steps forward to realize these goals and bring the Business Roundtable's recommendations to life. We thank the General Assembly and Governor Cooper for all of these advances forward. Our commitment continues today, and we still have work to do. Today, in fact, the need to increase third grade reading proficiency is even more urgent. As you'll hear, COVID learning losses have impacted our youngest children the hardest, and particularly our students of color and those from low-income families. As we look past recovery from this pandemic and toward a strong, sustainable economy with an eye on equal opportunity for every North Carolinian, we must increase early literacy by implementing and expanding what we know works. Today we have two requests we will outline in detail to help reach that goal. First, our policymakers must continue to prioritize our North Carolina pre-K program, maintaining state funding and, when possible, increasing funding to continue the expansion we have seen over the last 4 years. Second, in our efforts to increase early literacy, we urge the state to commit significant recurring funds to train all of our educators, our teachers, principals, university faculty, teacher mentors, and others. So now let me turn things over to Dale.
Thanks, Jim, and good morning to each of you. Like Jim, I was part of the original group of CEOs to work on the Business Roundtable's recommendations. Our group now has grown to 26 North Carolina business leaders, and we are supported by the North Carolina Chamber, the North Carolina Bankers Association, and 15 local chambers of commerce. When we began, we chose 3 of the 6 Business Roundtable recommendations on which to work. We've seen progress on all 3, and now we've added a 4th. There are 2 issues we initially worked on, one being that North Carolina needs a birth through age 8 comprehensive aligned system from our early learning programs through grade 3. And the second one was we need to collect data and manage that data and analyze relevant data within that comprehensive system so that we can better ensure that children are on track and stay on track to achieve reading proficiency. I'm glad to say that we've made progress on these goals through the B3 Interagency Council that was created in 2017 to address these issues, among others. In fact, a robust data system is being designed and it will be ready to go later this year. We applaud the General Assembly and the Governor for moving this forward together. The third recommendation was ensuring more eligible 4-year-olds have access to our high-quality North Carolina pre-K program. As Nick and Fred will discuss, we've seen significant increases in funding for the programs over the last 4 years, as well as strategic thinking to address challenges to expanding access. The fourth recommendation, on which we are now also working, as Jim stated, is investing in our educators to enhance their skills to teach early reading. Tom and Don will be discussing this in much more detail, but we are excited that North Carolina is making progress on this front too. In addition to my work with this group of business leaders, I also have the privilege of chairing the board of My Future NC. That's an organization whose mission is to significantly increase education attainment by 2030 so that we can meet the skilled needs of North Carolina businesses. Although third grade reading proficiency is certainly taking a longer view toward educational attainment, it is critical. It's a critical milestone and one of the most reliable predictors of future success for children. As the old saying goes, through third grade, children learn to read. After that, they read to learn. As we've said from the beginning, a child who is reading proficiently at the end of the third grade is 3 times more likely to graduate from high school and go on to some type of post-secondary training or education. And the converse of that is that a child that is not reading proficiently at the end of the third grade is 4 times more likely to drop out of high school. North Carolina certainly had a lot of work to do before the pandemic to increase early literacy. Because of COVID, that work is now even more challenging and more urgent. I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to discuss what we knew before the pandemic and what the data is telling us now. Kelly.
Thank you, Dale. Good morning, everybody. And thanks to all of the leaders that are joining in this discussion today, which is very, very important. If I may observe to you, leaders I have found have three characteristics. One is that they're very honest about the reality they face. Second is they're very clear about the vision of where they want to go. And the third is they have the courage to go there. Our reality is not good. Even before the pandemic, our results in North Carolina and across the country were not good. More recently, we have information from the National Assessment of Educational Progress. It is not good. Only 36% of the North Carolina fourth graders were reading proficiently. And if you disaggregate those data, it gets even worse. While 63% of the white fourth graders can read proficiently, only 24% of the fourth graders low income can read, 26% of the Hispanics, and 22% of the black fourth graders can read proficiently. These are not recent numbers. This has been going on for several decades, at least back into the early 90s. And look, let's be clear, this is not just a North Carolina problem. This is a national problem, but we're focused on North Carolina. And COVID has made it worse. As the pandemic began, McKinsey and Company, a world-renowned expert company, predicted that the learning loss would be greatest in low-income blacks and Hispanics. And they projected a loss of up to 12 months, a whole year of learning. Now, most recently, a study by Amplify, a leading research firm in reading, did a study with 41 states, 400,000 students in K through 3. And they show that the performance today is much worse than it was the same time last year. And it's particularly pronounced in the K through the first grade in the black and Hispanic community. In the percentage on track to read proficiently, it decreased from 55 to 37% in kindergarten and 58 to 43% in the first grade. Now, this is very disturbing. The same study showed that the number of black and Hispanic kindergartners at risk of not learning to read had almost doubled. And sadly, these same trends are in North Carolina. In February, 75% of our third graders were not reading proficiently. I want to say that again, 75% of our third graders are not reading proficiently. This is simply not acceptable. We owe it to our children to have a bright and promising future, but you cannot have a bright and promising future in the world we live in today if you cannot simply read. So I want to join Jim and others in thanking the governor and the General Assembly for passing SB 387. It is a fantastic move in the right direction. Let's now all have the courage to go forward, and let's fix this for the future, for our kids and our grandkids. Now let me turn it over to Darius to talk about the impacts of COVID on the future of our talent pipeline. Darius?
Good morning, and thank you, Kelly. Consider this prediction from the World Economic Forum. 65% of the children entering elementary schools today, that is 2 out of every 3, will ultimately work in a job that does not even exist today. That number is driven by technology, which as always continues to advance our nation's economy. Technology moved us from an agrarian economy to the Industrial Revolution to today's advances in automation. Education is one of the best ways to meet the advances of technology and prepare for jobs that not only not exist yet, but perhaps we cannot even imagine. We know the more education a person has, the more nimble he or she can be in the changing economic workforce. During the Great Recession, for example, those workers without a college degree who experienced the worst unemployment rates compared to individuals with a bachelor's degree or higher. As we're seeing it happen again in real time because of COVID. These in the lowest paying jobs have lost jobs that may never come back. And these job losses have disproportionately impacted people of color. Even before the pandemic, North Carolina business leaders knew what we were facing and would continue to face a very real skills gap, a mismatch between the skills our workforce has and the skills, degrees, and credentials our businesses need. As we think about the jobs of the future, that skills gap could widen as even more education and training beyond high school be increasingly required. COVID has forever changed the landscape our workforce needs and has likely accelerated the need for higher educational attainment, a trend not likely to abate. Third grade reading proficiency is key to the ability to weather a changing economy and attain the education and skills to meet the needs of North Carolina businesses. That means we need to ensure all of our students learn to read by third grade so they are able to read to learn the skills they'll need to succeed. The recommendations we're making today will address inequities in our workforce and help us develop a strong, diverse, and resilient talent pipeline well into the future. Let me turn things over to Nick to discuss how our North Carolina pre-K program can help us reach that goal.
Good morning, and thank you, Darren. Cindy Sadie, the CEO of SETI, had hoped to be here today for these remarks, but due to a personal matter, could not make it. I'm here in her stead, and thank you for being here today. Without a doubt, high-quality pre-K programs are the foundation on which a comprehensive system of literacy development should be built. We have that program at North Carolina Pre-K. Duke University has studied North Carolina Pre-K for over 15 years. This is the longest longitudinal study of its kind in the U.S. Duke confirmed that participation in the North Carolina Pre-K has 4 major benefits, and these are significant benefits. Increases reading proficiency, increases math proficiency, reduces placement in special education, which, by the way, is a big savings to the state of North Carolina. And finally, it decreases the chance of students being held back in grade. Duke also found these benefits last through the 8th grade. There is no fade out of the benefit program. Duke and the General Assembly's own professional staff also found we should be enrolling at least 75% of our eligible children. When that level is achieved, not only will North Carolina pre-K children be better prepared to enter kindergarten, those who were not in the program do better in kindergarten as well. There's a spillover effect from the positive peer influences. So when our work started in 2017, we set a goal of 75% enrollment in NC pre-K eligible children in every county in the state. By setting a county level goal, we believe we can better achieve equity across our education system. Back in 2017, only about 43% of those eligible for the North Carolina pre-K program were able to participate. That meant that over 36,000 eligible children could not access the program. With the work of many, including this CEO group, we've seen meaningful increases in North Carolina pre-K funding over the last 4 years. We thank the General Assembly and Governor Cooper for those increases, which have allowed an additional 6,500 children to participate in NC pre-K through the 2019-2020 school year. Unfortunately, even with the funding increases, many counties declined funds to expand their program. We have 30,000 eligible children who could not access the program, and that was before the pandemic. In addition, 3/4 of our counties are not meeting the 75% enrollment goal, with some counties serving less than 30%. As you know, our group commissioned the National Institute for Early Education Research, or NEAR, to understand what challenges counties were having to expand their North Carolina pre-K programs. NEAR found in a report released in early 2019 that because the state funding structure requires counties to cover 40% of the cost, too many of the counties simply could not afford to expand the program. NEAR also found difficulties in recruiting and retaining qualified teachers, funding transportation needs, and finding more classrooms. NEAR's report included recommendations on how those challenges could be addressed to achieve the goal of enrolling 75% of eligible children in every county. We are pleased that much of NEAR's analysis was incorporated in recommendations from the Landro Commission and now by DPI and the State Board of Education as a way to achieve equity in our education system, beginning with North Carolina pre-K. Let me turn things over to Fred to discuss how COVID has impacted in North Carolina pre-K and how we can get things back on track.
Good morning, and thank you, Nick. Before COVID, enrollment in North Carolina pre-K had increased to just over 31,000 children, roughly 50% of the children eligible. In 1 year, COVID eliminated all enrollment gains made over the last 4 years. Statewide, over 9,100 fewer children enrolled in North Carolina pre-K this school year than the school year 2019-2020. It dropped from serving 50% of eligible children to serving only 36% of those children this school year. It left 64% of North Carolina pre-K eligible children, over 39,000, unserved. Only 9 out of 100 counties were able to serve children they had anticipated. A variety of factors likely came into play. Centers were struggling to stay open. Teachers were concerned about their personal safety. Parents were concerned about the safety of their children. The drop in North Carolina pre-K participation compounded by the fact that over 15,000 few kindergartners were in class this past year. We want to caution the drop in enrollment should not be viewed as a decrease in demand or need for North Carolina pre-K. To the contrary, although we have much to overcome, this proven high-quality program targeted at some of our at-most risk children is needed now more than ever. To get North Carolina pre-K back to where it was and expand access to reach the 75% county enrollment goal, we're requesting the following steps be taken during this legislative session. First, continue to prioritize North Carolina pre-K by maintaining funding and, if possible, increasing funding so expansion can continue until we reach our county enrollment goals. Second, adjust for inflation the state's funding of North Carolina pre-K, which has not happened since 2012, and require annual inflation adjustment going forward. Third, take into account economic viability of each county by modifying county state cost sharing percentages to help most economically disadvantaged counties cover program costs. And finally, target funds to raise willing 4- and 5-star child care centers to meet North Carolina pre-K qualifications. An incremental cost approach to increasing access while targeting funds to address specific challenges such as transportation, classroom space, and teacher compensation. Now I'll turn it over to Tom to discuss our other goal, helping educators enhance the ability to teach young children to read. Thank you. Tom?
Good morning, and thank you, Fred. There's an additional recommendation from the Business Roundtable's 2017 report that we're discussing for the first time here today. Ensuring our educators have all the skills they need to teach our young children to read based upon the science of reading. Children don't learn to read naturally or even easily. As a result, teaching children to read is very complex. The science has confirmed there are 5 components to learning to read. This goes beyond just phonics and also includes phonemes, or how different letters form different sounds.